What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Alistair BL, and we back at it again with yet another video. So before we get started, I wanted to say hello. Hopefully everybody's doing good. As you can see, I am in a entirely new space, nice setup and stuff like that. So thank you so much for patiently waiting. It's time for the final spell, Thundaga. This spell was saved for the very last because it is the hardest to use correctly. This will be a really big introduction to the advanced portions of Sora, because a lot of this, when it comes to Thundaga, will involve theory crafting and us using a lot of the system mechanics in the game to work for us instead of against us. Please trust me when I say that there is a reason that all of these concepts are explained in a certain way, and I ask you to trust the process. You'll be learning how to use this in no time. This will be a much more thorough and controversial video compared to the rest of the guides to explain thoroughly what Thundaga is capable of. Although it's commonly discussed as Sora's worst spell, but more of his most complex spell, and it has various uses to which it is pretty good at. I will explain how Thundaga works, its various uses, which will include high percentage kills, sharking below the ledge, spell switching, capitalizing on frame traps, extending advantage state, ledge trapping, edge guarding, whiff punishing, and option select mix-ups. I will arrange them from the most basic to the more in-depth and harder ones. I want you all to notice that I did not put anywhere in here that this spell is for zoning. We will most likely be using this spell when we are already in an advantageous state, resulting in you as a Sora player to use the Keyblade more when this spell is out while you're in neutral, so then you can try to get your advantage state started. There is a reason for this, as this spell is extremely risky to use with zoning and will end up getting you killed most of the time. If you are not feeling confident in your ability to just use the Keyblade, don't worry, I'll be covering how to do this in another video. Without further ado, let's get into Thundaga. How Thundaga works. Like I've discussed previously, this spell has a lot of great uses to it. Sora will summon 3 thunderbolts in front of him that are designed to combo into each other and send the opponent upwards. The first bolt will either combo into the second, then the third bolt, which has the strongest knockback, or it will combo only into the second bolt, but the third will miss. This may not sound ideal that it sometimes only combos into the second bolt, but there is a use for this that we will cover later in the video. Also, if the first and second bolts miss, the third bolt can still hit your opponent and knock them into the air. The third bolt will kill at some very odd percents, ranging from mid percents up to higher percents, depending on how close your opponent is to the top blast zone, and in some cases the horizontal blast zone. All of this depends on the spacing of where the hitbox hits your opponent, their hurt box, how they shift when they hit, and if the spell knocks them correctly into the rest of the bolts. Unfortunately, it is very difficult to pinpoint whether this hitbox will scoop into the others or not. However, we can use this form of random chances of what bolts will work to our advantage, which I will discuss later in the video. The time that you can act out of this spell is also very interesting as well. All 3 bolts do not need to come out in order for you to act. In a very rough estimate, around 2.5 bolts need to come out before you can shield, which is frame 1 and the fastest thing we can do since we're out of the recovery frames. This means we can act a little bit faster than what is perceived visually, especially to our opponents. Sora can also adjust when Thundaga will start in front of him. If it is done on the ground, the spell will start slightly away from him, while if done in the air, it will start very close to him. We can also B-reverse this spell, and the same situation can be applied. This will slightly adjust where Sora will land, which will also have another use later in the video. The spell can also be interrupted depending on when your opponent hits you physically or with projectiles that cause Sora to flinch. If you are hit as the first bolt comes out, the other 2 will not come out. If you are hit as the second bolt comes out, the third will not come out. There is no particular use here, and it's more of a big drawback of the spell. Another big drawback of the spell is that you are left wide open for big punishes. Either the bolts will miss and your opponent can hit you out of it, or they can stay close to you, shield the bolts, then punish you. These downsides should paint a clear picture that there are precise moments in which you want to use the spell. And even in these precise moments, there is still a form of risk of using it. This is not the spell to be lazy with, because there will be many stocks you will give up for no reason because of bad Thundaga placement. However, if used correctly, especially if the third bolt hits correctly, you will realize why this spell is so important to Sora's overall kit. I cannot stress this enough. This spell needs to be used with a purpose and will ultimately force you into using your Keyblade majority of the time, since it is at its strongest in advantage state. If it is difficult for you to just use the Keyblade, I will talk about this in another video as well, so don't worry. A great thing about Thundaga is that we can use this while we are below the ledge to hit our opponents, sharking below the ledge. This works well to interrupt our opponent's ledge trapping against us, such as Ike's Neutral B, Snake's Up Smash, Samus's Bombs / Charge Shot, Sephiroth's Giga Flare, and much more. At higher percentages, we can also kill our opponents for trying to ledge trap us this way, then make it safely back to stage without dealing with any of their ledge trapping. However, all opponents can shield this when they see it and if they are able to. But this is also a benefit in itself, because now they have to traditionally ledge trap us instead of being able to set up and properly 2-frame or kill us for it, since we will most likely be on the ledge before they have time to set up. For spell switching, this use upon the rest of the remaining uses is the start of the theory crafting that I've talked to y'all about before. It may sound confusing, but I highly recommend you rewind if you need to, so you can understand what is being elaborated on. While this spell is really good when we are mostly in an advantageous state, there will be times where Sora will be in neutral against the opponent, and keeping Thundaga at the moment is not ideal, since we may need to zone with the other spells. So instead, we can get rid of it. Then Blizzaga is available immediately after, ready to use, for zoning in this case. A great situation this applies to is when we have taken our opponent's stock and they have invincibility when they get off the angel platform. One common quick option we can do is immediately get rid of the spell once the opponent's stock is taken. Another common option is for us to retreat to ledge and have to immediately take a ledge trap in order to run out that invincibility. You want to jump off the ledge, reverse the spell towards the stage, get rid of the spell, and then either go directly to ledge or try to hit your opponent after they try to catch us with a 2-frame or something of that nature and start our advantage state or attempt to pull a reversal, or get back on stage, or just knock them away to where we can reset neutral with Blizzaga in hand to zone with if we need it in that case. This works well since we'll be using Sora's hurt box shifting, his aerial drift, and also the fact that he's a very tiny character to safely switch out Thundaga. We've already talked about how this spell is most ideal when in advantage state, so let's expand on that. So the first way is the most simple way that honestly results in a lot more success than what it looks like on paper. I'm not even joking, sometimes just throwing it out after a combo actually helps, and you could potentially catch someone trying to use an aerial to free themselves up to air dodge, or they think that they can punish you by landing with it and it backfires. Next, I'm gonna bring up a couple basic examples of where we can properly apply this. In some cases, sometimes a jump Thundaga might need to be used, sometimes a grounded one, or the B reverse variation of both. Just depends on the character. So let's say our opponent is at 60% and then we do Nair 1, Nair 2 into up air and we send them right above us. We can send Thundaga out here to potentially try to catch our opponent and kill them, depending on what option that they try to do in disadvantage. For this one specifically, I'm using B reverse Thundaga at a certain timing to catch them as soon as their air dodge invincibility frames expire. This can result in them dying for being above us, and we can safely use the spell without putting ourselves at risk. The next few examples complement extending Sora's advantage state, but are detailed within themselves. So let's use a different form of the previous example and expand on it even more. Let's say the opponent is above us, but they expect that we're going to throw out Thundaga, right? The main options that they will have are to double jump, air dodge, press an aerial to get out of tumble, in this case wanting to get access to air dodge again, or fast fall to the stage when they do that aerial. Or they can go to the ledge since they're being juggled. We can use Thundaga to force one of these options from our opponent and when we want them to do it. These scenarios are good to force our opponent to pick a panic option when put in a bad spot, and we can put them in a worse position or potentially take stocks. Keep in mind, we do not need Thundaga to hit here. If it hits, fantastic. But if not, we will have enough frame advantage to react to all of the options that I just talked about. Remember how before I told you that we only need 2.5 bolts to come out in order for us to act instead of all 3? That means we can throw out the spell and react to how our opponent reacts to Thundaga coming out and punish accordingly if we read it correctly. Although there can be numerous examples of how we can punish our opponents, let's talk about how we can capitalize on this. In terms of trying to catch the double jump, we can stay on stage and chase where they are attempted to double jump to and attempt to catch their double jump with the spell. Whether Thundaga hits your opponent or not does not matter. Once again, you can make both of these situations work for you. If it hits, this will either kill them on the top of the screen or put them further into the air so we can continue our pressure and they have one less resource. Now that they have no jump, let's just say they utilized it, they will either attempt to air dodge, press a button to get themselves out of tumble so they can fast fall to the ground, or they're going to try to neutral/directional air dodge. Now in this case, we can attempt to follow where they want to directional air dodge and punish them with simple things like dash attack, pivot cancel F tilt, F smash, or up smash. This may also lean into them trying to retreat to ledge as previously mentioned, meaning we can now ledge trap and keep up the pressure that may send them off stage right into edge guarding, and then that can also lead into a stock if done correctly. But we're covering all bases when we theory craft about this spell. So air dodging. This will be one of the more common examples of what people will try to do once you throw out the spell after they jump, so people don't get hit by it or killed from the top, as previously discussed. For a small but brief example of regular air dodging and not jumping, your best bet will be to try to punish them with the spell as they air dodge, because they will be free to get out how they want. If we throw out Thundaga too late at that point, then neutral will be reset. For a quick briefing and the scenarios that I will cover, we can cover neutral air dodge in, and air dodge away. For neutral air dodge, this air dodge will be the most straightforward for you to cover and will just depend on when you cast a spell in order for it to work. It's recommended that you use a full hop/short hop Thundaga to punish it, since it will have faster startup and is less likely to go past the opponent. For air dodge in and away, we're going to cover these more laggy air dodges that most people will go for in a state of panic. I recommend to cover for both air dodges of in and away, drift towards the opponent, so you can react punish where they intend to go. I'll cover this more in another video, but because of Sora's air drift/floatiness, you'll need to be doing a mix of reacting but also an educated guess on where you think the opponent will go. The reason why is because he does not have the fast movement speed to purely react and punish people compared to characters such as Fox. This theory will again be covered in another video, but also will have to be developed over time as you continue to play Sora. Since these air dodges have more recovery frames than a neutral air dodge, you will have more time for placing Thundaga. For air dodge away, you want to jump and drift forward to use the bolt after fast fall landing in place with up air, so that it will start slightly above Sora and be able to hit the opponent. Depending on the percents in the situation, This may result in the opponent getting sent upwards and dying for it, or pushing them further away based on how the bolts interact with the opponent's hurt box. To use the grounded version, you have to drift forward after the up air, do not fast fall it, then cast a spell once you've landed. This can potentially send the opponent to the side or up depending on what direction of the DI. For air dodge in, you want to attempt to jump forward, full hop or short hop is okay, then B reverse the spell. This will result in the opponent being absorbed into the spell mid-air dodge. Once again, you can pay attention to how many bolts actually hit the opponent and capitalize accordingly, since this read will cause varied results for how Thundaga will want to absorb the opponent into the other bolts. We can also catch opponents when they are put into tech situations above us on platforms. Treat this as a low risk and either low to high reward way to punish the opponent that will give us Blizzaga on hand if we need it afterwards. Neutral tech is the best to try to punish, but you can place it how you want on platforms to make it based on tech roll away or tech roll in. Also keep in mind that Sora has more higher risk yet higher reward ways of reading or punishing opponents that are above him this way, such as up smash or various others that were covered in previous videos. For ledge trapping, Thundaga has a few ways in which it can be useful. Some of these ways will actually land with the spell itself or visually condition the opponent into doing something that we want. The spell is capable of two-framing and scooping the opponent from where they will try to flush to the ledge. This also applies when the opponent stays on the ledge for too long, and it will send potentially into the second or third bolt. At higher percentages, this will either cause a kill or a bad situation for your opponent to continue to be in when they're off stage. Once it's able to hit our opponent, it is just as effective by not actually hitting them. When people see this spell come out, their most natural reaction is to find ways to dodge it, which will safely get them to ledge. This is what we want, because we can capitalize on these things if the spell is placed early enough. This can cover air dodge in as well if done correctly. We can also throw the spell early enough to force them to make a quick option when they flush to ledge. This covers get up attack to where we can shield just before the final bolt comes out and then we can punish. Neutral get up with a standard ledge trapping option like F tilt, or into Blizzaga, which forces another 50-50 for the opponent to be desperate to get out of. This early Thundaga can also be another mix-up of forcing our traditional ledge trapping, but with incentive of a spell, in this case Blizzaga, being behind it, to where we can punish other options such as jump and roll in accordingly. This is a form of mind games for our opponent. They will be multitasking about not getting hit by the spell itself, and will be conditioned into doing what we want, as opposed to if there was no spell to begin with. Thundaga is a very useful spell to use for edgeguarding. It can set up for extending edge guards that can later lead into a stock, potentially kill from the top, or put your opponent into a bad spot. Remember how I told you that there is a chance that Thundaga may only combo into 1, 2, or 3 bolts? Edgeguarding is where this scenario shines. The most common example is when all 3 bolts connect, then your opponent is forced to use another option to get back onto stage to where Sora can potentially cover it. We can decide to go off stage with our opponent and pinpoint where they have attempted to go and punish them for it. If we full hop and they haven't used their double jump, they will get knocked, and we can attempt to chase them with our own double jump and send them back off stage with forward air, or potentially killing them with up air. We can also attempt to catch them with neutral air. It is recommended to try to catch them with nair 1-2 into a fast fall up B where they failed to air dodge in time, or if they neutral air dodge. The counterplay to this is that they can air dodge in, although we can cover it with fast fall turnaround up B, or they will most likely get back on stage, but they will have extra damage on them. If they don't have a double jump when all 3 bolts hit, this now forces a desperate get back to stage option, which can be air dodge in or whatever recovery option they attempt to use to flush to ledge or get back on stage. If they air dodge in, you can attempt to double jump slightly backwards and catch them with forward air to knock them back off stage to continue your edge guard or it may cause their stock to be taken. We can also use Thundaga to jail our opponent when they try to double jump and air dodge, but they get sent to the top and killed. This one requires a bit of trial and error, since sometimes it may be good to BBS a spell on stage, sometimes off stage, stay on the ground and do it towards the ledge, or jump off the stage and cast it, depending on where your opponent ends up. The next situation is only when Bolt 1 connects. It's not the most ideal situation. However, paying attention to only this one bolt hitting can help us react to what the opponent wants to do afterwards. If they air dodge in, but we're still on stage, we can try to punish with F tilt or F smash to knock them back off stage and continue our edge guard. If they make it to ledge, we now have Blizzaga and can set up for a ledge trap. If they air dodge away and we're fast enough, we can use fair to send them back off stage again as well. Thundaga 2 is the most interesting one. It serves as a weird drag down that carries people forward and sends your opponent downwards in some cases, similar to Joker's up air drag down after fair 1. This one is the silliest, but it's surprisingly useful, since most people will potentially try to air dodge the other thunderbolts. This first and second bolt, but not the third, can cause people to air dodge in or away and put themselves in bad spots to where they can't recover, or they make an easy ledge trap situation for us. Whiff Punishing. This situation is one of the riskiest to implement with the spell, since this requires you to understand what your opponent may try to do against you, and using microspacing and BBS to your advantage. Messing this up can cost you severely in matches, so I highly recommend you either do this when you have an additional stock to lose, or if you are extremely confident with where you are going to place a spell. A small yet effective way this can work is if someone is attempting to attack you when they are above you, but the spell places itself above where you are to protect you. Then send in the other bolts to potentially drag them to the side with only 2 bolts, or send them upwards with all 3 bolts. When in this scenario, you need to think on your feet very quickly. You will not have much time to be able to take advantage of this, and hesitating to do it can potentially cost you your stock if you're not careful. However, it can also make it very annoying for the opponent to catch you or gain big reward from the correct read, which makes the high risk, high reward aspect worth it sometimes. Another way of using this is where we jump off stage, then BBS Thundaga towards the stage. This can punish someone attempting a dash attack, a grab, or an aerial, depending on where they are positioned. This scenario is a gigantic flex for Whiff Punishing, because your opponent can just barely whiff their attack and get hurt for this. Some form of them trying to grab you or attack you when close will work here. Finally, you can try to BBS a spell on stage and catch someone trying to grab or attack you. You have a couple of microspacing mix-ups with this one as well. You can either short hop, then BBS, but doing no drift, short hop, BBS, drift backwards or forwards, full hop, BBS with no drift, or full hop and BBS drifting backwards or drifting forwards. The objective of these mix-ups is for you to just barely be out of your opponent's attack range. Then the spell can punish them and send them upwards or away from you. Once again, be cautious with this situation. It can be hard to do this correctly and will require a lot of trial and error to master this one. And finally, we have option select setups. This situation for the spell covers where we don't need it to connect in order to use it to our advantage. The key to these option selects is to use Thundaga earlier than what you usually would do. To the naked eye and your opponent, it looks like you're just throwing away the spell for no reason, when in reality, we want our opponent to react to the spell itself. Here are a few options for this. Conditioning the opponent to think that they can attack you. We shield, then punish accordingly with something such as up B or nair combos if the move is punishable enough. Getting rid of Thundaga early from a safe distance, then having Blizzaga at the ready to whiff punish our opponent, then put them into a bad 50-50 situation, which might kill them with up smash or just call more mix-ups. Having the condition of using a spell requires a lot of mind games, which I will go into further detail about in another video, since it requires you to have very thorough and a better understanding of what your opponents want to do as a whole. Alrighty, that'll be it for this video of the key to Sora, and I want to thank Sai so much for editing this video, and thank you all so much for watching. Now that every spell has been covered, in the next video, I'm going to cover how to use all three together. Thank you all so much for patiently waiting for me. We are back with the content, about to go crazy, you know what I'm saying? And I hope that everyone has enjoyed this video as much as I am. Looking forward to bringing additional content to y'all. But until then, take care, may your heart be your guiding key, and see you in the next video.